The cash envelope system is a great form of budgeting, but we all know that there are times when even the strictest cash budget category will require you to use your debit card. We'll explore ways to do that without knocking you off track.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is StewardShift, a show that gives you the tools you need to get the most of your best resources. Your money, your mind, your body, your time.
Welcome back to the StewardShift Show. My name is Troy Solomon Levy, and I am your host. This episode is especially for those of you who use the cash envelope system for budgeting, or if you aspire to use the cash envelope system for budgeting, but aren't quite sure how to make everything fit together. Maybe you're using a combination of cash and debit card, and life is gray. Life is rarely black and white. And even for budgeting, even when it comes to money, yes, with budgeting, you are going to use some cash if you aspire to do that. And you are going to use some debit card. And that's totally okay. It doesn't have to be clean cut. It doesn't have to be black or white where you're just using all cash or just using debit card. Look, as long as you're budgeting, I'm just glad to hear that you're budgeting and you're interested in learning how to do this more. So I'm going to share with you the methods that Rochelle and I use to get on the same page with our cash envelope. And the reality is that this is one of the top things that we use in order to get out of debt years and years ago. We had over $70,000 of debt that we paid off in 28 months. And again, one of the major reasons why we were able to do that is because of the cash envelope budgeting system. Previously, well, first of all, at some points, we had no budget whatsoever. And then when we did start budgeting, we tended to use pen and paper. We used like another budgeting system. And then we ended up trying to use an app. But at some points, we got off track where I thought that she was using a certain amount in the budgeting app, and really she had used more, or I had used more, and we were just disconnected. We had gotten off track. But when we ended up using the cash envelope budgeting system, that's what really got us on track. And I'll show you how in this episode and how you can utilize this with any hybrid approaches to budgeting in terms of for a certain category, if you're using cash, but also you have some debit card expenditures for that particular category, and how to merge the two in a way that makes sense. So for us, how we do the cash envelope budgeting system before the month begins, and we usually do this a day or two, at the very least, before the month begins, we withdraw the cash that we need for our particular categories. And this is usually preset, so we usually don't have to go in and calculate it every single month. There are times when there are some anomaly kind of months where, there are certain events that we have or certain categories that just need an extra amount of cash. But generally speaking, this is the same amount every single time. And we withdraw this before the month begins so that on the first day of the month, or maybe on the last day of the previous month, we'll go ahead and sit down together. We'll have a budget meeting together, and we have a conversation. Usually that consists of, hey, how did this past month go? Where do we kind of get off track? Where do we overspend just a bit? Where do we underspend? And how can we make any adjustments? Where do we need to put our heads together and talk through some things? And we usually have that at the same time that we divvy out the cash for the following month. And as we divvy out the cash, I'm going to share with you exactly what my cash envelope looks like. This is mine. I've had this for years. It's a bit tattered. And I'll show you another one that I used to have. And I'll share with you why I'm showing both of these to you. But I've had this probably since college. Now, I haven't perfectly budgeted with the cash envelope system since college, but this is something that I used to use in college. So you'll notice that the elastic is like really, really long, and this is just really, really old. But this is the one that I use most of the time. I still use this other blue one for certain things that I don't carry cash out with me. I usually don't carry this with me. And so the expenditures or the budget categories that I have in here, they usually do not require me to carry the cash outside of my home. So that's what I use this one for the most part. And of course, because it is clear, I try to be as tight as possible. Of course, yes, we do live in a dangerous world. And because this is see-through, I don't want people knowing that I have cash in here. So I usually carry this one around, and usually I leave it in my car. Every now and again, I do take this inside the store with me, depending on what's going on. So when I divvy out the cash, when Rochelle has her own, we put the cash inside of the budget categories inside of this envelope. Now, of course, again, we don't use cash for every single thing. There are some things that we just use card for, just use our account for, such as our mortgage or our utilities. I don't go to the utility company. There's some people who still do that, and that's totally fine. I do not take the time to do that. I do pay my utilities online. So, of course, there are certain categories where you're just going to use debit card, and there are certain categories where we just use cash for the most part. One of those categories tends to be groceries. When I go to the store, the grocery store, I tend to use, and I would say about 90 something percent of the time, I use cash. But there are some categories that we take a very hybrid approach to, where it might be half cash and half debit card. So especially for those hybrid categories, I'm going to teach you how to have a good approach for cash and for debit card. And one of those categories for us tends to be miscellaneous. Now, miscellaneous could mean just about anything, but usually those could be books on like Amazon, or it could be some makeup or something of the sort. Could be board games, or like these are the miscellaneous things that we don't have like a specific category for, because we tend to purchase these things few and far between. And so we don't have one specific category for them. So let me just walk you through the process. Let's just say I have an expenditure on Amazon. I tend to buy books on Amazon, and books are definitely in our miscellaneous category. What we do before the month begins is we don't withdraw all of our cash from our account. We have a good buffer. We have a pretty sufficient cushion, and that could look like hundreds of dollars. That could look like maybe up to $1,000 or so. You know what you need for your particular circumstance and your life. But make sure you have a good sufficient cushion so that when you do have a debit card expenditure, that the amount of cash that you need to use for that expenditure can be there. So once you have a sufficient cushion in your account, what you want to make sure you do in your cash envelope is to have what I call a bank section in that envelope. And here's what my bank section looks like. There's already just a little bit of cash in there. All right. And this is clear. So this is not it doesn't have a label for me. Now you can have one that has a label that says bank. But for me, this one is clear, and any loose cash that I have that I spent online, that automatically goes in here. And I'll show you what that looks like. So that's number two. Number three, you want to move cash from that particular budget category. So if I bought a book from Amazon, that'll come out of my miscellaneous category. So I'll take that cash out of that particular envelope, and then I'll move it over into the bank part of my envelope, which looks just like this. And this does zip up and zip down. Mine is very, very tattered, like I said. So I think my zipper isn't working quite right. But once you do that, this bank category right here does not get spent. And every now and again, what I'll do, I'll go to the bank and deposit it. But most times that is not necessary unless it's like a really, really large expenditure. And I just want to make sure that the cushion that I had in my real bank isn't coming down too much. But for the most part, I'll just actually keep this with me until the following month. And then instead of withdrawing the full preset amount of cash from the bank at the end of the month and before the beginning of the new month, then I'll just dip into here and take this cash out and take out less or withdraw less from the real bank, and just use this, repurpose it for any categories for the following month. So that's how I do it. That's how we handle those hybrid kind of expenses. And that's our approach to our cash envelope budgeting. So let me just say that, yes, using the cash envelope system can have its quirks, but I find that the pros definitely outweigh the cons when you are proactive about navigating the pitfalls of the cash envelope system. So I really hope this helps. Happy budgeting to you. And for all of you who aspire to use the cash envelope system, hopefully that this will give you a bit of a boost so that you know how to navigate every situation as you have these hybrid expenses.